I'm still making my way. It's a little, not a hobby. It's not something that I particularly enjoy, but it's giving me a fascinating insight, not just over the connections of Jeffrey Epstein, but also the interconnectedness of politics, business, intelligence. Those who I thought were righteous people, like one Noam Chomsky, found particularly prominent in the Epstein files. No criminality to be proven, but just the proximity to someone who I admire in terms of his books and his writing, being very close to Jeffrey Epstein. But there are also South African connections. Yesterday we asked the question, should the Hawks be looking into any connection between Jeffrey Epstein and young women under the guise of modeling contracts being recruited here in Cape Town. But what I want to talk about next is the story of Juliette Bryant, because in 2002, while a 20-year-old psychology student here in Cape Town, Juliette was recruited under the guise of a career-making modeling opportunity. And she was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein here in Cape Town. And then within 3 weeks, she was flown to New York, but then diverted to Epstein's private island. And she details with some glaring and quite real emotional trauma what she experienced. And she writes this in her book, Blue Butterfly, Inside the Diary of an Epstein Survivor. Joined now on the line by Juliette Bryant. Good morning, Juliette. Thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Hi, Lester. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You've obviously you've put your story down in words. You've obviously, and I've been doing quite a lot of reading and listening to some of the previous interviews you've done. But for the benefit of our listeners, maybe hearing your story for the first time, detail how you met Jeffrey Epstein here in Cape Town.
Of course, Lester. And just to also mention, the book has actually been cancelled. The author had security concerns, so the Blue Butterfly book's actually been cancelled. But I will be trying to go ahead with another book soon. Just to mention that. Sorry, it happened recently. What happened is I met Epstein. I was at Osaka in Kloof Street. I was doing modelling at the time. As you mentioned, I was studying psychology and philosophy at the University of Cape Town, but I did modelling on the side. And at Osaka, they had free drinks for models. So I was there with a friend of mine, and I was approached by another girl who said, can she come stand with us? And we said, yeah, of course. And then she said that she was here from America, and she said her friend Jeffrey Epstein was here, and he was like the king of America, and he owned his own island in the Caribbean. She said he was here with Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker, and would I like to meet him because it could really help my modeling career. So from there, we went to Beluga, where they were all having dinner. Clinton and Epstein, and they were with a few government officials. And Clinton, Epstein, Spacey, and Tucker all stood up during dinner and shook my hand, and I was introduced to them all. I was only there for about 5-10 minutes. And then after I left, the girl called me, and she said that Epstein really wanted to see my modelling portfolio, and would I be able to go to the Cape Grace Hotel the next day for a modelling casting. She also said that Bill Clinton was doing a speech at the Western Cape Peninsula Technicon, and would I like to come and watch the speech. So, of course, I was very much wanting to see the speech, and I went to watch the speech. And then after that, I went to the hotel, and they did a modelling casting. There weren't any other girls there. I was the only model at the casting. And Bill Clinton actually witnessed the modelling casting taking place. There were 3 girls posing as modelling agents. They said they were from Karen Models. The girls were Sarah Kellen and Andre Metrovich, and another girl, Cindy Lopez. So they looked at my modelling book, and then I was sent through to see Epstein. And then he said, right, I think you'd be great for Victoria's Secret. So they arranged me a visa, they arranged me a passport, because I'd never travelled out of South Africa in my life. I'd never travelled alone. And as you said, I was quickly whisked away to America.
You say posing as modelling agents. From what why would someone who's not in the modeling industry, and particularly someone who is a former president of the United States, when you are in a room doing a private casting, that sounds very odd to me?
Well, what you see, the casting was actually taking place. They were almost. It seemed like they were sharing an adjoining suite, like the executive suite at the Cape Grace Hotel. So it was the first room where you came in where the girls were sitting, and then Bill Clinton walked past me and into another room behind. So it was like he. It was when we come back from the speech, he walked past behind, and then he was like, "Hi, everyone," and he walked off.
Gosh.
And then you see, so it was like, yeah, it was like the sort of entrance foyer of the hotel suite
Yeah.
where the casting.
I want to
Yeah.
get to more prominent people in a short while, but then within 3 weeks of that, you're then flown to New York, but you then immediately diverted to Little St. James. That's the private island. Your name then intentionally is omitted from specific flight logs. At what point in your experience does any suspicion get raised?
Well, what happened is, so I landed in New York at the modeling apartment where I was supposedly going to be staying, and then the phone rang, and it was the girl Sarah Killen who posed as a modeling agent, and she said, "Pack a small bag. We're going to the Caribbean." So of course I didn't have any money or a phone there. You know, they told me that I didn't need any money. They said they would be deducting money from my income, you know, to pay for my ticket and everything. So the car came back to collect me, and then they drove me to Teterboro Airport. And then Epstein was on the front of the plane, and then the two girls who posed as modeling agents, the two of the three were on the plane. And then he patted the chair next to him, and then as soon as the plane took off, he started touching me forcibly in between my legs, and I got a terrible fright. And the other girls just laughed, and I suddenly realized that these people, if I didn't do what they wanted, I just got this horrible feeling that my family weren't going to see me again. Oh. I thought that, oh my gosh, these people are going to kill me. And I realized I had to go with whatever they wanted. And it's sort of, you know, I'd only ever had two boyfriends before then. So I was, you know, it was just a very, very frightening position to be put in. Yeah.
Juliette, it's still a time of the morning where there may still be children in on the school run, so we won't get into much close detail. But you can confirm serious abuses took place not only on the island, but also in what's known as the Zorro Ranch. This is Jeffrey Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. Tell me about that experience of not on the island, but being in New Mexico, a veritable desert, in a little fortress of buildings in almost concentric circles. You describe it as being some sort of theatrical, psychological game that was being played in, not just with Jeffrey Epstein, but the people who attended there.
Yeah, it was a very, very frightening place. That was the last property they took me to, because they actually took me to all the properties. And as you mentioned earlier, Lester, my name was left off that first flight log. So if I'd gone missing, no one would have known where I'd gone. But my name was on the other flight logs, but not on that one. But not always, you know. So it brings into question all the flight logs. Yeah. But Zorro Ranch was a very frightening place. As far as I know, it's the biggest property in New Mexico. It was a massive, frightening place. And I was actually there. I was looking through all the details. I was there for almost 2 weeks, and it's weird because I don't actually remember being there for that long. You know, it felt like quicker. And it was just, I met scientists there. I met also Michael Bay, the movie producer, but he denies being there. Yeah, it was just you know, and I realized, you know, I came back from there really not feeling okay. I had severe panic attacks. You know, I was hospitalized with trauma. And then, you know, all these years later, I started putting the pieces together and realizing, you know, what I assumed was going on because of the weird things that happened there.
What is a little bit discouraging over this period, because I'm going through the files. I'm seeing names, recognizable names. I'm seeing the people in proximity to Jeffrey Epstein, even after his initial conviction, which then labels him as a sex offender. And I see the connection between politics and business and tech CEOs and people who are involved in information peddling and intelligence. And I'm trying not to get my conspiratorial reptile brain here to go in that direction. But if we were in any other time, outside of Donald Trump, particularly Donald Trump's presidency, because he becomes a important part of this conversation, this would be an international outcry, similar to the Panama Papers or WikiLeaks, but it doesn't seem as if we're having the conversation. Who are some of the people, may not necessarily be connected to criminality, but some of the people that you saw were close to Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I was taken to the governor of New Mexico's mansion while I was in New Mexico. Another girl and I were taken there, and they looked us up and down, shook our hands, and then went in to have a meeting with Epstein. So he was definitely involved with politics. I also met him with Clinton. He used to often say he was on the phone to George Bush or Bill Clinton. As we know, they're just a very, very evil lot of people, and it seems like it's all tied together. That's how they get away with it, because people in positions of power watch out for one another. It's like the Yale Society, the Yale Skull and Bones Society, things like that, where they all have a president and a judge, and they put people in positions of power so that if any of them ever get in trouble, they get off.
Did you know Virginia Jeffrey, a key whistleblower in the legal trial of Jeffrey Epstein, a person who particularly pointed out Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as being part of this? Did you know her? And her death by suicide, obviously, it speaks of the deep trauma of victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Do you know her? Do you speak to other victims, other survivors?
Unfortunately, most of us have actually been kept apart from each other, and they even tried to get me to sign a clause saying that I wouldn't be able to do any interviews or post anything online without a lawyer's consent. But I had that clause removed, and I think a lot of the girls have signed that clause. But going back to Virginia Gifford, she's an amazing woman. We used to speak on video chat often, and we were also on a group called Survivor Sisters with a couple of the other victims. She was so brave, and I just find what happened to her incredibly troubling, and it's tragic.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly what happened, because what happened is we used to speak, and then suddenly everything got a little much for her. So 2 years prior to her death, I was given her husband's email address and told that I could email her through that account. So I emailed a couple of times, and then I just stopped getting answers from her. So I was very concerned, but I didn't know what to do.
Juliette, let me preface this first by saying I am deeply sensitized to the feelings of trauma of victims of gender-based violence. I understand the psychology of grooming, but I want to ask you, but your names are also in the Epstein files, and I want to talk to you about your relationship, or maybe even the pressure you under mentally, because in 2015 you emailed Jeffrey Epstein, "Hi, how are you? I'm in New York on Sunday. Would be great to see you if you're there." Another message says, I've read a few things people have written about you, and I can't believe how awful people are. What is your mindset in this particular period?
Do you know what? He has a great psychological hold over me. I was incredibly traumatized when I got back from there, and a lot of the girls developed a sort of Stockholm syndrome. Also he said that he had my family's name on a list. He told me he worked at the CIA, and he told me that a girl who accused him of rape, he planted drugs in her apartment and had her sent to prison. So, also in 2016, he emailed me out of the blue asking, was Sarah Ransom a friend of mine? A South African victim who was taking him on at the time. It affected me so badly that I was terrified of him, and I just thought that it was best to just be on his good side. Wow. I also never thought that he would actually get caught, and what actually happened, I suppose, is I developed a sort of another side of me to cope, and the times when I actually emailed him were times when, like, I'd been drinking a lot or going through a hard time. It was like when I'd almost dissociated, I didn't speak to him generally, and I only saw him one other time after 2004, because one of his assistants was in touch with me, and we went for coffee one day. So
why do you
also in my mind, you see, he made it out like I was bad and it was my fault that I'd been taken there, and also in the media they were saying that he was being had up for being with 14-year-olds, and I hadn't actually seen him with any 14-year-olds. So I just thought that, he made people think that the media lied,
Mm.
and, I wasn't, yeah. And then also what really happened is after I was given settlement money and I had time to see a lot of therapists, and I managed to untangle the hold that he had, the psychological hold he had over me and the terror, and also when he'd apparently died.
Wow.
And I also became a mum, and
Mm.
I guess the more I just started looking into everything to try and
Yeah.
figure out what happened to me for myself.
Yeah.
And the deeper I dug, the darker it got, and I realized, how evil they were. And
Do you
and
believe now,
if you'd like to see the
Juliette?
last email I sent him an email actually 2 months ago. They don't show all my other
Yeah.
emails. And I said that I hope him and his corporation rot in hell.
Gosh. Yeah.
And also, they weren't actually supposed to release my emails. They did
Is
that, I
it?
think, because I wouldn't sign their agreement, because
Wow.
no other victims' emails were released like that.
Yeah.
And they've done it. They've done it to try and tarnish my reputation.
Your name is visible, and for the record, I completely believe you, and from what you describe is the groomer's playbook. But now, do you believe that the children were hurt as well? Is that something that
Yes,
you
well, that's the
categorically
whole thing. Is
believe?
that after I started doing more research, I realized that I think they took my eggs. And when I came back
Oh
from there, I wasn't
gosh.
okay. I was hospitalized 10 times with panic attacks.
Mm.
I felt like I was going to die every day for 10 years after that. I had severe bulimia. I couldn't keep a
Mm.
meal down for 10 years after him. So, you know, I was just very, very scared of him,
Yeah.
and I just didn't know what to do, because
Yeah.
I really thought that he was going to try come for me and my family, and I couldn't afford to put my family at risk like
Yeah.
that.
And
But
what and what?
obviously when I realized how evil they were, then I was like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm putting our family's life at risk for what they've
Yeah.
done, because I didn't realize how bad they were.
Yeah.
I knew they were bad, but I didn't realize how bad.
So sorry about your experience and others, Juliette. How do you feel now? Like with and from what I read overnight, the U.S. Department of Justice say they're going to be releasing more documents, and they actually said, well, there's going to be more unredacted parts. Hopefully, it's the names of people who either facilitated or who were cognizant of what was happened, But how do you feel now? How safe do you feel now? And I really
I
I
don't feel
really
safe.
appreciate you talking to us. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you so much for having me on, Lester. No, I don't feel safe. I live in a security estate. I've got two Dobermans. I can't even go to the beach anymore. I used to love going to the beach. I've been followed. I've had my tires slashed twice.
Mm.
I'm followed by people, followed in a car.
Wow.
And I've lived in Africa my whole life,
Mm.
apart from when I was taken to America. And I used to go out on my own and walk down Long Street. There's no ways. I don't even drive out in the night anymore. Like being a mum, and just
I,
it's
and
I almost feel like I had a tracker on my other car.
Yeah.
I've got a new car because no, I don't feel safe.
And look,
But I feel safe where I am, but I don't feel safe going out.
and just for disclosure to our listeners, I completely appreciate you doing this conversation to us. We've been very cognizant about not being anyway pushy, and appreciate the trauma that you have lived through, but also in the way you live your life in an incredibly secure manner. So I just want to say thank you again. But we're running out of time. But I want to leave it. Well, ask the question about what does justice look like to you? You have Jeffrey Epstein. He's now gone, and we can leave the circumstances of that up in the air for now. You have Ghislaine Maxwell, who is still in jail. We don't know whether there'll be any form of clemency from Donald Trump. But you mentioned the names of people who were part of his circle, whether they were criminally implicated. That needs to be tested. But what would justice look like to you for the people who firstly knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, was part of it, but also those who knew that he had a reputation, but still continued to be friends and backers and political connections and have dinners with a man like Jeffrey Epstein? What would you want justice to look like here?
Well, it's been a huge relief that more's actually come out. I didn't think this day would ever come. I was hoping it would, because I know a lot of the stuff hasn't even made its way to the media. If you look through the files, I think the media is too frightened to actually even touch on a lot of it. On X, you'll see it all, and it's horrific. Justice, I suppose, is coming. I don't think that any of those people can ever go out on the streets again, like Bill Gates, Bill Clinton. I don't think it's a very good idea for them to go in the public. I think anyone who's ever harmed or killed a child or anything like that deserves to be executed with immediate effect. Justice, I would say, would be just these people being held accountable, because also, even like Bill Clinton apparently used to handle the cocaine coming through Arkansas. These people aren't just into human trafficking, they're into drug smuggling. There's a whole lot of other stuff that they do, because where there's money, where there's power, where there's greed, you'll find politicians generally. So I hope that they're all held accountable, and I hope that they're exposed, and I hope that good people come into positions of power. I guess that would be justice, and obviously children being protected, especially coming from a place like Africa. It hurts me very badly to hear of these horrible things. And, what were they doing when they came here? Kevin Spacey filmed all the kids in the hall, and all these years later, I've realized that these people are capable of the most horrific things. And I just hope that they, in a way, I just hope that anyone who's part of it actually just drops dead.
Yeah.
So that the world can become a better place. I don't wish ill on anyone generally, but I'm sorry, if someone's hurt a child, then they deserve to be dealt with.
I'll leave it here. How old is your boy?
He's 7.
And what you're going to do that's going to be fun for the two of you today?
I've actually got another interview with Sky News, so we're driving out. We're going for a nice drive. It's in Kommetjie side, so we're going to take a nice drive, and we've got our amazing Lottie coming with us. Lottie helps me with Kai.
Okay, Juliette, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being open and available to us. We did not want to preview this interview until you were online with us, not to simply just to protect your integrity and to protect and to keep you essentially safe, even here in Cape Town in South Africa. But really appreciate your time. All the best, eh?
Thank you so much, Lester. And everyone in Africa makes me feel safe. I'm really glad I'm here and not in America. I couldn't be prouder to be an African. So thank you so much.
Juliette Bryant, really appreciate your time.